Mark Luschini, he's standing by with Janney Montgomery Scott. He's got about $71 billion at his firm. You've been listening to us talk, Mark. What is it in your mind here if we're focusing and the world seems to be focusing on issues such as Russia, and then those types of things can spook the market, can they not?
There's plenty of those items out there, Liz. I mean, one you were referring to earlier was the fact that we still have very unambiguous details on what's going to come out of this corporate tax reform, which I think the market's put a large down payment on at this juncture, and it's accounting for this price-to-earnings multiple expansion that's occurred and is occurring in this market. And in the absence of validation by way of some legislation on that front that is going to either impact 2017 or be ripe to promote economic growth in 2018, it leaves the market vulnerable to a setback, let alone any of the other geopolitical events that could erupt along the way, including, obviously, elections in Europe.
Yeah, well, yes, of course, the Paris elections in May. You're a very realistic guy. We had Steven Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, tell Neil Cavuto not only would there be a tax reform plan by August, but it would be signed and it would be passed. Do you see that happening?
Frankly, it seems a bit implausible that it could occur with that degree of rapidity, given how far that seems away at this juncture, but really isn't by way of the legislative process. And to not only have something out there and debated, but to actually have it legislated seems exceedingly ambitious to me.
Okay, Janet Yellen said, barring any economic disaster or black swan event, we will see a rate hike coming up in 2 weeks at the March meeting. How do you put a portfolio together in advance of that?
Well, look, you know, the Fed fund futures had already begun to pull that expectation forward, jumping from 40% probability to 90% this week. It's a lock. So you can't do anything about what has happened. The question is on a go forward. I think she did a good job today of finding that balance between putting the hike in play and yet at the same time not saying that the Fed's going to continue to accelerate rate hikes over the balance of the year. I still think that leaves room for some of the interest rate sensitives, but on balance, we like the pro-cyclical sectors, the economically sensitive sectors like financials and energy, which stand to do better from what we're seeing, which is better economic activity.
Terrific to see you, Mark. Thank you very much. Mark Luschini of any time, Janney Montgomery Scott. He says it's pretty ambitious to get an August bill for tax reform passed, but who knows?